Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to a new edition of Urban Sentinel Live. And I'm your host, Reggie Kearney. I'm also the publisher of Urban Sentinel magazine, and I want to welcome you on to tonight's show. I hope all is going well here in my area, Maryland. It's a little cold. We had some snow still hanging around. But other than that, life is good. I can't complain. Prayers go out to the people in L.A., who are really going through something right now. So let's keep them in your prayers. And if you can make a donation, please do so. They're going to need a lot of help in trying to rebuild out there after these terrible fires. As you know, we got some changes coming up next week. You know, we won't even discuss them tonight, but I hope everybody go out and celebrate MLK, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday this weekend. You know, enjoy yourselves. I mean, if you want to celebrate the other stuff that's going on, hey, do it. Do you. But let's remember our beloved Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This weekend as we celebrate his life. Okay, so tonight we're going to dig into Black wealth, okay? Black prosperity. How can we maintain and hold on to our money? You know, because things are going to change in this country, and we need to try to come together and stop the old saying is crab in the barrel mentality. We need to get rid of that, you know, and start working together, because we spend too much money not to have more than what we have in our communities. At this time, and we're not supporting each other. So tonight I got my man from Jacksonville, Florida, the wizard himself, the wizard of economics, Richard. So Richard, come on and talk to us. Talk to us. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you again for having me on. And yeah, I love this conversation about wealth and Black wealth specifically, unapologetically talking about Black wealth.
Right.
I think that we've got to start, in fact, you don't normally hear that word, you know, be following Black. Usually when we say Black, it's always Black spending power, Black spending power, Black spending power. We now need to be talking about it as what it is now, and it's Black wealth. And it has been, our spending power has never been an issue in this nation. Never. The Black spending power could have reached $100 billion. And I mean, $100 trillion. It's well over 1.6 trillion now. But why is it becoming a problem? And I know that we're going to delve deeper into it in this show tonight. But Black wealth is a problem because with wealth comes power. And so Black spending power just simply means the money that you're giving to somebody else. But Black wealth is power that you're keeping for yourself. And when we start talking about power for ourselves, that's when it becomes a problem, because the powers that always equate a rise in our power to a diminishing in their power. So that's where we need to begin. So I don't know what exactly angle you want to take. I don't want to take the show into a different angle from what you had planned, but we can't have the conversation about Black wealth without the conversation about Black power. And then we can't have the conversation about Black power without having the conversation about white backlash to Black power. And that seems to be the thing that we always ignore. We ignore the fact that white people get angry And at any move that we do going forward, historically, I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
I'm historically, you just can go back and look at history.
Mm-hmm.
Every every advancement that Black folk have made in this country beyond um, beyond being um, slaves and enslaved, every advancement has been met with some sort of retaliatory action. And we're seeing that right now. The only difference is we're at a point to where it's proactive. This is the first time we've had a proactive attack on Black power. They usually attack only after we show up. But now this stop woke is not about, it's literally about stop this momentum that they are getting because now they're beginning to infiltrate because we're beginning to have the power. What's my man? Eddie S. Glaude said it best. He says, it's about them being afraid when they see these racially ambiguous babies on the Cheerios commercials.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh my God, they're infiltrating us. We
Mm-hmm.
gotta, and so now we need to stop woke.
Yeah, but you can see that with the situation that's going on in LA at this time when they discuss DEI. Okay, so first of all, white males do not like those words DEI. Okay, and that's why these companies are getting rid of the DEI departments because of Magna and stuff like that. But you can see how they talk down about DEI. You know, they talking about Karen Bass. You know, she's DEI. You know, she's not intelligent. She's not this. She's not that. She's black. She's a woman, and all this kind of stuff. Okay, that's the stuff that those are little code words now. Okay, instead of coming out straight up and calling us the N word, they're trying to use something that we have developed that's been developed by us. You know, after coming out of dealing with affirmative action word, they're trying to use something now to try to diminish our abilities. Okay? You know.
Well, you're absolutely right. I see you have the graph
Mm-hmm.
on this, and that graph is is something I created uh, just actually within the last couple weeks. For
Mm-hmm.
years, I've been talking about all of this information at one point or another, but I wanted to put it all together. If you first when you look at that graph, the first thing I want you to notice is that line that there's a vertical line going down the middle. And that vertical line that's going down the middle is the before the 2008 collapse and after the 2008 collapse. And, or we could say before Obama and after Obama. Before Obama, if you go back from 2010 to 2000 and 1990, you can see the graph starts at 1980. In 1980, that purplish red line at the very top, you can see it has 75%. That 75% represents the fact that 75% of the wealth in this country was in the hands of the top 10% of the wealthiest in our nation. And so the number that I always gauge, and I believe that this is where the battle is. The battle is between the wealthy white men and the the empowered black man. And if you go back and look at our history, this is what is the quiet part that's not told. Prior to 1865 and during that period of prior to the 15th Amendment, nobody voted except rich white men.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't, the only reason to vote was because you owned property.
Right.
That was it.
That was the only reason. That's what it was all about.
Yeah. It
That's
was
what it's all about.
the property owners were the shareholders of this thing called the American Corporation. That's all it was. And so if you owned property, you had a share. And so but the representatives that they had was based on population, and that's the part that we miss is when this nation was being formed, they were saying, okay, we the people have representatives, and yes, these representatives who are landowners will come to Washington to represent all the people in their states. So when the southern landowners came to say, okay, we should get a vote, we should get a certain number of shares of stock in this new uh, organization called the United States of America Incorporated. How many shares of stock do we get based on the number of people that we have? And they said, look, you got a lot of people down there, but most of those people that you have down there, you brought over here on slave ships. And if we count all of them, you will have an unfair advantage against those of us who just, naturally were born up here, whatever the case is. They said, okay, well, this is the way we'll figure it out. We'll only count 3/5 of those for representation's sake. So three-fifths of 1,000 is, what is that? 600. So 600 out of every 1,000 black folks got counted, and therefore they sent a representative to Washington, D.C. But it was still wealthy landowners who got to have representatives come up. And that happened, that was the case all the way up until 1865. Then the Emancipation Proclamation, which led to the 13th Amendment, the freeing of enslaved people, then the 14th Amendment. And I want you guys to understand this. I don't know if you remember, Trump said, we're going to get rid of birthright citizenship, right? Do you notice how quickly he stopped saying it? When was the last time you heard him say? He hasn't said it since the first time he said it. And the reason why, I guarantee you the reason why they stopped him from saying it is, whoa. If you start talking about changing the 14th Amendment, black folk are going to become hip to the fact that the only reason they have a right to be here is because of the 14th Amendment. They're going to become hip to the fact that the 14th Amendment gives them more power than any human being on earth, because it's constitutional that we are property, but we are property that have rights. And so those rights have been given over to corporations, and corporations have filed more lawsuits under the 14th Amendment than African Americans for whom it was written.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you take all of that into place, you get to this chart, this graph. It makes sense. 75% of the wealth is in the hands of corporations. Wealthy, 10%.
Now, we keep going. We coming out of 1865, and we're coming into the 20th century. You got to realize, white folks, they got upset because we had our Black Wall Streets, because we had the smarts. We were smart enough to develop our own, okay, and they didn't like that. And most of the time, what we were doing was better than what they were doing, okay. And we were making inroads, and they didn't like that. So they said, wait a minute, these black folks, they getting a little beyond themselves. They don't need us no more. They don't need our banks. They don't need our hotels. They don't need our grocery stores. They don't need nothing. Let's wipe them out.
That's exactly it. But here's, and I think that this is the magic, that the more they talk about segregating us, the more they consolidate our power.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the message that I want us to get, is we've gone from being the commodity, and where we were traded and we had no choice. Then after 1865, they figured it out that we want to be consumers. We became consumers. So as consumers, they still think of us as a commodity, but they recognize that as a consumer, they can make money off of us. But now we've gone from that commodity to the consumer, and we recognize, wait a minute, I can become the laborer and the owner. I can own my labor. And when we made that shift from consumer to laborer and then ultimately owner, and then on top of that, we were given the all of the things that we got since the 1980s or since the 70s, basically affirmative action and everything else, and and those dollars began to show up. Our spending power began to go up, just as that graph showed. Our spending power went up. As our spending power went up, they knew. Every indication said at some point this African American spending power is going to make a shift and it's going to go from consumer to investor. And when they start investing in themselves, they'll have the ability to create their own stock market. And on top of that, once their stock market their market becomes contained, then they're going to start attracting other people to invest in their market. And we're already at that place right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're already at the place where one technology, we're one app away from bringing us all together as one. We're one artificial intelligence platform, one software, one cryptocurrency away from Black folk being able to say that we are one. Now, whether it's my company that does it or some other company that we partner with, or who knows, we all may have a little bit of a share in that. But I believe over the next 5 years, after Trump, now these other idiots out there, they're trying to sound like Trump. And on a sidebar, I don't know if you got a chance to see that hearing with Texas, where they were talking to him about his job as going to take over the Department of Defense. I mean, he's a carbon copy of Trump because they ask him a question. It's a very simple yes or no, and he goes on the attack because that's what Trump has taught them to do. Don't answer any questions. Just attack, 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 attack. And what will happen is they'll back up. And if we continue to allow them to do that, they're gonna destroy us as consumers. But the unintended consequence is that as you cut back our ability and even our desire to consume, you're actually doing Black folk a favor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, rather than being $3.2 trillion consumers or $6.4 trillion of consumers, now we're $4.5 trillion of investors. Because that energy, that wealth energy, has to go somewhere. So,
but the thing is, we can't get there, okay? Because of the crab and the barrel mentality, okay?
But you know what? You hit it. You. That's just a mentality. And in fact, let me tell you what I think about the crabs in the barrel. When I look at the crabs in the barrel,
before you do that, let me say this: we've got to get rid of that mentality, okay? Then that mentality has to go. Because if we don't, we're not going to get anywhere. They're going to roll right over top of it.
Number one, that mentality is a myth. I say there's no such thing as a crab in a barrel mentality.
I think it is. Okay, we might not agree on that, but I think it is because I've seen too many Black businesses come along, and then the friends get jealous because of the success that person is having, and then they stop supporting, talking about, you hired in the white man. I can go to the white man and get this cheaper. I've heard all that stuff.
Let me tell you what. I'm listening to Sam Walton's book right now.
Uh-huh.
I listen to Sam Walton, and Sam Walton sounds just like the journey of a Black man. If you listen to Sam Walton build Walmart, and don't think of him as a white dude, just make him a Black man.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about Sam Walton's story would fit.
Mm-hmm.
From the way he would show up at a meeting and not dress properly, and everybody looking at him, looking down on him. But now maybe he had privilege to be able to not see that was going to hold him back by itself. But he talks about how he has gone into meetings And after somebody has met with them, they could write a newspaper. They turn right around and talk about, I wouldn't invest in that company. It's raggedy, blah, 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 blah. Sam Walton said he went back to Bentonville after his company went public, and nobody there in Bentonville was investing in Walmart. The
Mm-hmm.
very company that he thought would be supporting him wasn't. I'm like, man,
Mm-hmm.
Sam sounds like he's black. He's going through the same thing. I
Mm-hmm.
get what you're saying. There are people who will pull you down, but this belief that that's our biggest challenge, if we say that the biggest challenge that we face is the crab in a barrel mentality, we don't stand a chance against the other battles that we gotta face. And
Mm-hmm.
even if crab in the barrel mentality was real and it was a real problem, it is certainly not our biggest challenge. It is not the biggest challenge. Our biggest challenge is a lack of infrastructure. Our biggest challenge is that if I need money, I can't go to my richest, wealthiest black compadres and raise the capital. And even if I couldn't raise that capital without having to get the permission from the Securities and Exchange Commission and the IRS and the outsiders to give us the permission to do that. Now, I think that our and I'm not even going to say our biggest challenge. I'm going to say our greatest opportunity. Our greatest opportunity is to look at the success of all of these other communities and all of these other entities and duplicate it. Just simple as that. So, thrive. I want those of you who are listening to this live and watching it on replay. I want you to go and do a little bit of a search. Go and search the word thrivent. Thrivent. Thrivent, and you can type in Thrivent for Lutheran. And what you're going to come to is the fact that the Lutheran Church has a financial arm that all the Lutherans put their money in, and it's managed. They don't send their money to to Merrill Lynch or to Fidelity or to or any one of these big Wall Street investment firms. They started their own private investment firm, and there's now, I think, over $170 billion or maybe more private money that's under investment, and they're just Lutherans. Then you can go and look at the Mormon Church, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or look at the Walton family and see that the Walton family incorporated their family, and their wealth increases at a rate of what? How long have we been on this call? 30 minutes. So in the 30 minutes, the Walton family wealth has already increased by $2 million just in the amount of time that we've been on this call, and their wealth increases at $1 million every 15 minutes of every day. Just their money increases. So we can look at these different structures and say, okay, well, what structure can we bring to our community? And I think right now, the number one thing that we can do is form small, they're called SPVs, special purpose vehicles. Literally, every church of 1,000, if your church has 1,000 members or more, you should have 4 SPVs. That means you should incorporate 4 different entities and put each one of your members as a owner of that entity, divided by 200 well, actually 249, because the last slot goes to the the managing partner that manages all the investors. But my bottom line is this: think about what that would do to every church, every black church that has more than 1,000 members. Create 4 different companies within that church, and each one of those has 249 members who all can invest. Now, they don't vote, they vote with their money. So when you put your money in, you shut up, you wait, and your money comes out, and you take your money and you put it somewhere else, and you keep doing that.
But
I'm
we've got to figure this thing out, okay? Because what's happening there? All of the companies are getting rid of DEI, okay? But they still want us to be consumers of their products or their businesses. Okay, we've got to figure out a way how to bypass those and have our own Walmarts, have our own grocery stores, our own things in our communities, especially in the larger metropolitan areas. Okay, your larger cities like DC, Philadelphia, Jacksonville, Orlando, Miami. We got to figure out. We got to figure out how do we develop our own and depend on our own and hurt these companies where they need to be hurt in their pocketbooks.
Well, and like I said, it doesn't take anything to figure it out. It's all the blueprint is already there. It's laid out right in front of you. I'll give you a very simple the way every individual family should be thinking, right? So you take your house, let's and I'll do it this way. Let's take the family that the mother, the father, the grandfather died, right? And you know the scenario. The house is left to the 5 children. Now, what do black people usually do when mama dies and the house is left to 5 of us? What we gonna do?
Sell it.
Hello. That's what we gonna do. We gonna sell it, and we gonna and you get yours and I get mine and blah 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 blah. Right? In Florida, they passed a law that makes it more difficult now for that to happen. So it's called heirs rights. So that means if the 5, me and my 4 of the siblings can't come to an agreement, I can't go and sell my shares to the white boy and get mine because he just wants one of us to sell. Now that he's there, now he's going to take the other 4 to court. These other 4 ain't got money to go to court, so now they're going to sell out. The way the law works now in the state of Florida, it says that even if this one does convince the other 4 to sell, it can't be sold just to him. It has to be sold in the market to the highest bidder. And that's how it stops a lot of that. But let's do this. Let's take that house and put it into a land trust. Now the family owns the land trust, but then we take the land trust and we put the land trust under an LLC in Wyoming, where nobody needs to know who owns it. And then you take that LLC and you put it with what's called a beneficial owner. A beneficial owner can be another group. Now your family LLC, and then you take that LLC and you put it into a revocable trust. Now, did I create that? Did I make that up? No. There are hundreds and thousands of people doing that. It's already there. How many black families are doing it? Not too many. How many black families know to do it? Very few. So if we start doing that, that's how you start recapturing this wealth. Now, the fact that you got grandma's house and it's got all of that money, you don't have to sell the house. You can leverage that house to get a loan to buy other property. It's just that we don't, if anything, the one thing that we got to do is focus on financial literacy and how to make these major chess moves and stop playing checkers. In fact, we ain't even playing checkers. We playing bid whist while they playing checkers and chess. And we can't come up to the thing playing bid whist while they're playing chess. So let's start making the same moves that they're making. Mark.
Yeah, Richard, along those I popped in there really quickly. Hey, Richard, one of the things I'm hearing a lot of people say, and everything along those lines, I might have to put you on mute for a second because I know we're getting some status and everything like that, is how much of it competition to be in a problem as well. Because right now we're hearing that the Latin American people are making a whole lot of money, the Asians are making a lot of money, and we're trying to do this whole competition thing. So what is your answer to the competition that you're trying to do to separate and divide?
No, I saw an Asian guy make this post, and he said the Asians are waking up, and he said Asian people need to recognize that Asians would not have what they have the ability to do if it were not for what black folk went through.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, this. He says, we gotta figure out how to come together as communities. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Black folk ain't gotta figure out how to come together with Asians. Asians are all over our community.
Right.
You got Asian people doing nails and hair and at the restaurants and the dry cleaning. They all over our community. The problem is ain't no black folk in the Asian community.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of these people that talk about what black folk need to do, black folk, I'm telling you, there is no crabs in the barrel. There is no need for us to have to figure out how to get along. And to answer specifically your statement about what do we do with this competition with Asians and everything else, and I may have said it. I don't know if I said this in another episode that we did, but please bear with me if I have. I did a radio show, and I brought a good friend of mine on, named Chef Amadeus, and it was 20 years before they even started talking about doing television cooking shows. He came on my radio show. One of the callers asked, "What do you do when you put too much salt in the stew?" And he gave an answer that just blew my mind. He said, "The worst thing you can do is add more broth because it might make it less salty, but it waters down every other seasoning." He said, "What you want to do is add more potatoes. You add the potatoes, and the potatoes soak up the salt. And then once the potatoes have soaked up the salt, you can just get rid of the potatoes, the extra potatoes. Now, what do you do, white America, when you got too much black folk in this stew? You add more potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
The potatoes that they added was the Mexicans and the illegals. Ronald Reagan knew in 1980 there were only 300,000 illegal immigrants in this country. Go back and look at the numbers. There were literally 300,000 illegals coming across the border, picking some cabbage and going back across. 300,000. By the time Bush 1 got into office from Reagan, it was 3.5 million. Why? Those were the potatoes that were sent over here to soak up the salt, get all the minorities set aside, make us fight and clamor for the little bitty things that are at the bottom. And now what are they talking about doing with those potatoes? What's Trump about to do with all those immigrant potatoes that came over here to soak stuff up from us?
Send them back home.
Send them back home because they have served their purpose. They served their purpose because they stopped us from reaching that point of critical mass where we would figure it out, how to pool our wealth and how to create our own Wall Street and how to have our own power. But I love the Bible. Oh my God, I love it when the Bible is right on. That which the enemy intended for evil, God intends it for good. And where they are stopping our spending power, dead in its tracks. And that goes back to that chart that I gave you, that you had up earlier. Our spending power is flatlining, and it's scheduled to flatline from 2020 all the way to 2040. We're going to barely see an increase in our spending power when it has been doubling every 10 years since 1970. It suddenly flatlines. Why? Stop woke. They stopped us. But guess what? That trajectory continues to go up in that chart. That's that green area. That trajectory shows that if we shift from being consumers and turn into investors, that's where the next 40 years is going to change the game. And so what we need to be talking about, Reggie, yes, I will not take away the fact that crabs in a barrel is real. I will not take away the fact that racism is real and all of the other stuff is real. But you know what's realer than that? Is God has given us the power to get wealth. And if we exercise that power to get wealth, it's not going to take 5 years before we back on track. And then watch what happens. I guarantee you, man, you're going to start seeing these white corporations. They're going to be slapping DEI all on their front door and saying, "Come on over here, black folk." Why? Because money loves speed. And the moment black folks shift and do something quickly, that money's gonna come over. And I'm not the prophet with a crystal ball per se. I just follow numbers and trends. And right now, the trend says that we're moving toward an investor class that the world has never seen. The world has never seen African American investor class. And that investor class is about to show up and show up strong.
But we got to figure out how to bring us all together. How did we have a meeting of the class and get on the same page so we can get the strive to make these goals?
Okay, well, again, and this, by the way, this is Richard Cuff figuring this out in his mind. I'm not asking anybody to come at me. I did another podcast, and the brother had me on with like 4 Trump supporters. Like I was surrounded. They like, and it was almost an ambush. And I have a good friend. He's black, and he said to me, because he's all Trump, and he said he is voting for Trump because chicken wings are high. That literally, he said, "Have you looked at the price of chicken wings?" And that's the issue that we have, where our focus now should be on how we can take this opportunity against all of those other negatives that are out there, and recognize that we can slowly make this shift, and it doesn't take everybody. The story that I give is when Moses was in the wilderness, and Jethro told him, choose out of all the men, able men who fear God, love the truth, hate covetousness, and make them to be the rulers over the thousands, rulers over the hundreds, rulers over the 50s, and rulers over the 10s. What we have to recognize is that Black folk have this tribe mindset, this tribe mentality. Yes, there's the crabs in the barrel tribe. Yes, there's the talented 10th tribe. Yes, there is the I want to live the alternative lifestyle tribe. There's the really creative tribe. There's 12 tribes at least, I know, that you can put Black folk into 12 different barrels, and none of them within that barrel will all think the same, because we're not a monolith.
Right.
But I think that the key for us is get away from the thought that we have to think the same, and get to the fact that we have to use the same systems. So the one thing that we got going for us is we've got the same language. We would be screwed right now if we had 12 different languages that we had to figure out which was going to be the common language. So we got a common language. We also have a common currency. And if we can begin with a common language and a common currency, then we can build everything else that needs to come after that. So the education system is common. The governmental system is common. We got so many things that give us a foot up in building out this new nation. And in fact, we already have a tried and proven Constitution, because we don't need to start over from scratch. The American Constitution is designed to fall apart and come back together again. That's what this nation was designed to hit the reset button, and we just haven't hit the reset button yet. So we can hit the reset button and come back with those same amendments, line up everything according to the amendment, and build this nation from scratch. But why should we wait for the reset button to be hit? God said, I will make out of you a great nation. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. Let's make ourselves a nation. So to answer, final, I'll say this. And Whitman Mayo, the guy who played Grady on Sanford and Son, told me this. He said, no revolution has ever begun with the masses. It's always 2 or 3 people who get together and decide to change things. Mark, Reggie, if you and I cannot have a meeting next week and talk about what we're going to do, then we need to stop talking about bringing everybody together. I don't need everybody to come together. We don't need everybody to come together. What we do need, we just need a point that says these 3 people came together. One more final thing, I'll tell you guys to research, and then I'm going to shut up. Go and research Buttonwood Tree, Wall Street. If you just type in Buttonwood Tree, Wall Street, what you're going to get is the story of the Buttonwood tree and how like 12 investors got together and decided that Wall Street needed to be organized. Because prior to that Buttonwood meeting, you had brokers who were selling stuff and not nobody, there was no control. There were certain people who were selling contracts that they didn't own and doing all kinds of stuff. Now they were trading slaves, yes, but they were trading other stuff too. But it was a wild west up there in Wall Street. And then they met under that Buttonwood tree, about 12 investors, and decided to create what today is Wall Street. We can do exactly the same thing. Question: we got 3. Can we find 9 more? Can we just get 9 more people? And if we can't get 9, can the 3 of us run with it? I've got my group together. In fact, I'll share this with you. If anybody wants to go to the group is called Quiet Honey Private Investors on Facebook. That's my group. That's me bringing people together. I think we may be up to about 150, 160 or so. But it's individuals who are coming together with an investor mindset that says, I'm joining you, Richard. Whenever it's time to make that move, just tell me. So I can bring, I could probably say out of that 160, at least half of them are ready to act. So I know, tell me, let's put together our groups and start coming together. And I got my tribe, you get your tribe. Let's make this thing happen. As you guys can see, I'm about action. I want to take some action.
Yeah, sounds good, because that's what we need to do. We need to bring this thing together and make it work, because they're not going to give us anything, okay? And anything we get, we're going to have to earn it out on our own and take it. And that's just the bottom line of it. We got to go to war now, because like I said, this country is changing on Monday. And if we don't wake up now, we'll never wake up. We'll just be sliding along.
I love this. I remember I was working at Macy's in Miami, and this guy had the buffer, the floor buffer, and it looked easy to me because the way he was, and I could operate the little buffer. I knew how to do it in the Army. We had a buffer in the Army, and I ran that thing. But this darn buffer that he had to be like, if the buffer that I ran was 60 horsepower, this thing was 6,000 horsepower. And I hit that handle, and the buffer didn't turn. I turned. That thing threw me in, it threw me into the clothes rack, and I'm like, hey, come here. It was not the same. I believe that's where Trump didn't get total control of this economy and total control. He had some people around him that were safe, that proved to be safeguards. He doesn't have those safeguards anymore. And he's about to get a hold of the wealthiest nation on earth, and it's going to throw his behind into the bushes because he's not prepared for it. The team that he's put together, it's like if this was a football game and you saw Trump putting people, like, I'm going to make you my quarterback and I'm going to make you my wide receiver. And you think you're going to get to the Super Bowl with that team that you're choosing? So what we need to do is this, it's like a stink fest for the next 4 years. Hold your nose. About 2 years in, I believe America's going to wake up and they're going to do the same thing that they always do. There's going to be a huge backlash, and Democrats are going to win the House and win the Senate in the midterms. And they're going to be like praying that the Democrats could come in and start reversing some of this pain that everybody's going to be feeling. That's if the economy hasn't collapsed by then. I don't fear. I don't think it's going to get to the point to where there's going to be blood in the streets and all that other stuff. There's going to be opportune moments, whether somebody set the fires in Los Angeles or not. Or our infrastructure gets, blows up, but it's always the usual suspects. Hey, you don't see black folk going out there and setting fires. It's always some angry 20-something-year-old white dude that's been eating this garbage all day long, ain't got a woman, ain't seen a woman in years, and I mean, it's all the same. It's been 10 years since he's been with a woman, and 5 years that he's been listening to this nonsense about your problem is caused by them. And So he goes out there. Um, I also believe firmly that the power. God, I'm a firm believer in God and the power of the Holy Spirit. So I trust and believe that when God says, "I will make out of you a great nation," He's talking about us, African Americans. We're the only people on earth. Only people. There's nowhere you can go on earth and point to a person and not say, "What country are you from?" We're the only people that can't say we're from the country of Africa America.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't exist.
Right.
You know, and certainly white America ain't kind of trying to DEI us into their America.
That's right.
So where are we? We have no nation, and God is hearing us now, and God's word is online. So God, that stuff that you said about "I'll make out of you a great nation," have at it. Let's make that happen.
That's right.
I will make you great. God, let's have it. I
Yeah.
believe He's going to do it. I really do. So I'm excited. I applaud you for your commitment to this podcast because it it gives a voice to the one thing that we need to be talking about, and that's how we can transition from where we are to where we need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Even if that's a slight move, let's go from you know where we are to where we need to go. Let's just make that little slight move, and I think that as we can start doing more of those, man, we're gonna make a difference.
But that's what we're going to do. Especially it's going to continue. We got to make a difference. I want to make a difference. I don't care if it's a small difference, but anything I can do to move us as people along and get us less dependent on these white corporations that all of a sudden want to get rid of DEI and things of that nature. We need to have our own AI. We need to have our own Facebook. We need to have our own everything. And hit them with the pocketbooks. Hurt them. Take their money away from them. And that's what we got to do.
Yeah, I think I believe it's already happening.
Mm-hmm.
One of the areas that I think is going to be up for a huge amount of growth is the area of coaching. Um, you know, right now, coaching is like the wild, wild west at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
There's real um, um, guidelines, if you will. I mean, there are certification organizations, but those organizations that certify are not certified themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's no governing body to certify a coach. The same way that there's necessarily not no governing body to certify you as a preacher.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you want to preach, you can preach. If you want to go and open your church, you can open your church, and that has destroyed African Americans because the Catholic Church. Most people don't make this connection, but one of the main reasons the Catholic Church is not trying to have these priests be married is because at the time of their death, they ain't trying to be arguing with the families of these priests over who owns the church.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been several churches that the pastor has passed away, and an all-out fight has broken out over who takes over what he has spent the last 30, 40 years building.
Right. It happens all the time. It happens all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
So what we've got to do is this: is man, we've got to recognize that by the common language, a common currency, and a common culture. So we can have that common language, common currency. Well, I say communication, common communication, common currency, and common culture. Those three, between communication, currency, and culture, we will be in a position to lay the foundation to start these little steps. And
Hey, Richard, just really quickly, how do you get past the how do we get past the folks that don't understand our own history and everything like that? Because we've got a number of people that don't understand the Black Wall Street. Because you said there was no investment class earlier. I would argue that there were some with the old Black Wall Street and everything like that. But a lot of people don't understand that history. So how do we get them to understand that history and to? Because I've had a number of people tell me there can't be a Black Wall Street rebuilt.
No, and that's because people they think Black Wall Street was Wall Street. Their Black
Right.
Wall Street was started by two guys. That's that was the Black Wall Street. Those two guys were Black Wall Street. And then those two guys convinced two more guys to buy something. But the environment that created Black Wall Street was this. White folk would what did they have? 15, let's do this. 15,000 black people lived in the area of Tulsa, Greenwood, right? And so let's just take 20%. Let's say 80% didn't work. Just 20% went to work. That's 3,000 people who went across the railroad track every month to make, let's just say $1,000 a month. 3,000 times 1,000 is a million. Them white folks, when they paid them black people, what did they tell them? We don't want you spending your Negro money in this store. Take your Negro money over there across them railroad tracks and spend. That was the best thing they could have told them. So
Right.
even Black Wall Street wasn't investing. Black Wall Street was spending. They just were spending it in a circle. That money circulated for 18 months. And the investors, which was the probably the 15 or 20, 30 so that put the initial money out there, not everybody in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street owned a business.
Right.
They had jobs. They worked for those businesses. But you could probably say out of 15,000, maybe 1,000 were business owners. And maybe out of those 15,000, those 1,000, maybe 700, 800, maybe 500 were investors. So Black Wall Street was never really about investing. What I'm saying now, when I say an investor class, I'm talking about where we all are thinking about investing. That's all. Everybody has an investment account. When you can do that right now, go get the Robinhood app or get the Cash app or go to Fidelity and open up a free account and start an investment account. But go down the street, tap black folk on the shoulder and say, "Hello, excuse me, do you have an investment account? Do you have an investment account?" And the answer is going to be no, 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 no. So that's what I'm saying about an investor class. It's creating a mindset that we're no longer just consumers. We're now investors. And
Right.
so there's plenty of opportunity to begin to educate investors in different ways. And I think that's another conversation about financial literacy. But that to answer your question, Mark, that's where we can begin, is to, number one, educate people that all of Black Wall Street wasn't Wall Street like. It wasn't investors. But what they were committed to spending that money within their community, even though it may have been because of white racism that forced them to do that. And so that's where we are right now.
But the other misnomer is that there was one Black Wall Street. My understanding is there were several Black Wall Streets. There was Tulsa, there was Rosewood down in Florida, there was Central Park in New York, there was Durham, North Carolina, where I'm at. So there were several Black Wall Streets, but you're right. A lot of times those were the elite leaders that were running the Black Wall Street.
Yeah, they were trading with each other. There was stories that in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there were only 2 airports in the entire state. But
right.
Something like 6 black people own airplanes, right? Black women were flying to Italy to buy clothing to bring back. They were going from these cities to cities, trading and giving everything. What is it called? Was it called Red Summer? I think it was.
Right.
And when all of those cities were like burned down almost orchestratedly, all at once. And let me see what it. Red Summer was a period of racial riots and white supremacist terrorism in the United States in 1990. It took place in more than 30 cities. So in 30 different cities, they were burned down. Whether that was orchestrated or not. But yeah, a lot of our foundations to If we call it black, and I'm a strict, um, I strictly say there's a difference between consumption and investment. So when we use the word Black Wall Street, we're talking about consumers coming together in a marketplace. So it was more of a black marketplace than it was a Black Wall Street. And I can't remember who. Somebody was credited for giving it that name, specifically
Mm-hmm.
Black Wall Street. I can't remember who did that. There was one person in particular. Um, and I two things, guys. Let me share this real quick. Number one, if it wasn't called Black Wall Street and it was called the Black Marketplace, it'd be resonating differently right now because we can see quickly putting together a black marketplace as opposed to a Black Wall Street. And
Mm-hmm.
um, the other one, I'll figure it slips my mind right now. But there was another one, another thing that I wanted to present that is simply the way that we view it, the name that we give it. Number one, Black Wall Street. Oh, Martin Luther King. That's what I was going to say. When Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream that one day, we will be judged by the content of our character and not by the color of our skin."
Mm-hmm.
Man, if Martin Luther King had not said those words, we would be in a totally different place right now. If he had said, "I dream of a day that we will be judged not by the money in our bank account, but by the content of our character,
Yeah.
not by the wealth disparity that we have." If he went there to speak at that, his first speech was about economics, but it fell on deaf ears for like the first 3 minutes, I think it was. And then Mahalia
Mm-hmm.
Jackson encouraged him to speak on that thing that he spoke about, the dream. He had got tired of speaking about that "I have a dream" sermon. And then he went into preacher mode. But if he had just been honest enough to change that "I have a dream that one day we will own banks," he could have thrown in all kind of economic stuff. But he made it about race and race and race and race. But if he had said money, 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 wealth and spending, "I have a dream that one day $1 billion, multi-billion-dollar corporation will open up its doors and allow small businesses that are in the African American community." If that was his speech, we'd be having a totally different conversation right now.
That's what people forget. That was his speech one time because one of the other speeches he gave was about economics. Because the "I have a dream" speech is the most famous one, but he did have one about economic power, and I forgot the name of that one. And I know he specifically addressed us building up our economic power. It's just that wasn't
Yeah,
the one that got the media attention.
yeah, exactly. There's several news interviews. There's one in particular where he talks about how in 1865, and nowhere in our history books does it talk about the Homestead Act that was passed in 1865 that literally gave all the land west of the Mississippi to white folk for free, pretty much. That whenever you see the little house on the prairie and that covered wagon thing, those were white folk leaving the big cities of New York and Boston and all the rest and going out in the Midwest and staking their claims. And anywhere you could put up a fence, you could claim up to 60 acres, and the government gave it to you. And that's what Martin Luther King was saying. Not only did they give them land, they gave them land grants to be able to learn how to farm, and they gave them loans to buy equipment. And they did all of that for those white folk to move out there, and they didn't give black people any of that.
Yeah, right.
And
It did. It did. Okay, Richie. Well, we've had a very spirited conversation tonight. We got to continue this on and keep fighting, keep building.
well, I appreciate this conversation. Like I said, I love these conversations because they have the potential to lead to action. Um, you know, that's as I said. I invite anybody to go to the. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram at I am Richard Cuff, and or just at Richard Cuff, depending on where you look at it. But Richard C. My name is on the screen there, and the Quiet Honey Private Investor Group on Facebook is where we are building. And I'd love to continue this conversation, and maybe we can come back and start, actually put together some sort of a conference or whatever it is, man. I know you're doing some great work. I got to get up there with you, check out what you're doing, in fact, on your neck of the woods.
Yeah, we definitely got to do that. Definitely got to do that. Well, look, everyone. this has been a great night tonight as we discuss black wealth and where we're going with it and how we're going to maintain our black power here in the United States with things changing on Monday. So I want to thank my good friend Richard Cuff from down in Jacksonville, Florida, for giving us that knowledge that we need tonight. And we got to figure it out and get it done and stop talking about it. And we got to hit the ground running. So until next Tuesday night, I want to thank everybody for joining us. And this is Reggie Kearney with Urban Sentinel Magazine. And Richard Cuff saying good night to you. Take care. Have a good week. Be safe and stay warm.